So Rabbi Isai, we spoke last week, we started talking about that during Tefillah, when one davens Shemona Esrei, one needs to have the proper machshava. We said a person should try to think the Pirush HaMilos, the meaning of the words, what he's thinking. And if he can't think the Pirush HaMilos, he should at least think in his mind things that are machnias alev, they humble the heart, and to think about Hashem. He shouldn't think about other thoughts. Now,
Rabbi,
this week, yeah.
Can I go into Torah ideas that have to do with what I'm saying, that I learned, that have to do with the concentration that I'm doing? There is Torah ideas. I don't know if that's a prayer, but they're Torah ideas, and by doing that, makes me more immersed, so to say.
If it helps your davening, if it helps, just to think, someone to think, questions and answers which he has in learning is not davening. It's learning Torah, but it's not davening. But if it's connected to something connected to Hashem, you're thinking ideas about Hashem and about how great Hashem is, then definitely could think about those thoughts. In Shulchan Aruch, it's brought down, based on the Gemara in Eruvin, that you should not daven in a place which is mevatel your kavana. For example, let's say the example that was given then was when people would make beer. Making new beer smelled. So you shouldn't be davening in such a place because the smell is disturbing you. Now, now we buy beer that's commercially made, so we don't have this issue, but people then would everyone make their own beer. And as well, someone shouldn't daven at a time when he finds that he is not settled. Let's say he's upset about something, or he's in pain, or because he's traveling, so his mind is not with him. He's traveling, and the tirch of the derech, it makes him not focused. He's not in a mind to daven to Hashem. So a person should wait till he's settled and find an opportune time. The Maisa, it's already brought down on Paskim that from earlier generations, that we don't have as much kavanah in general in davening today. Kavanah is much less. So a person shouldn't use these opportunities to excuse himself from davening, since we anyways don't have that much kavanah. So if you're someone who's on a high level and always has kavanah when they daven, so then you have to be very careful about these things. However, if in general you're anyways not having that much kavanah, so we're not going to say that you can't daven in these times. You should still daven. Furthermore, ideally a person should not make his davening rote. His davening should be that he's actually asking Hashem for rachamim, for mercy. Meaning you're not just davening because, I have a chiv to daven, let me daven and get davening past me. No, you're davening because you want to go before Hashem, before the king, and you want to ask him for something. And you should ask it like pleading, like you're someone who needs something. And not like you don't need anything and you're just davening because you have an obligation and you need to get past this obligation to move on in your day. You want to go eat breakfast, you want to go to work, so you have to daven up. Got to daven up davening and move forward. No, you should look forward to davening. Davening is something that we want to get into. When I was younger, so I had a mashpia in the yeshiva in Montreal. His name was Rav Wolf Greenglass, alav shalom. Maybe some of you remembered him. So Rav Wolf would say, the language is we find in halacha yoitza, the mitzvah. He would say, "Medarf nicht yoytze sein in the mitzvah. Medarf nichnas sein in the mitzvah." We have to enter into the mitzvah, not to leave the mitzvah. It was a play on words that we have to look to davening, not like, oh, let me get past the davening. No, it's a real thing, davening, and let's appreciate the davening. I always tell the Yingalite in Koilel that, as Bachrim, the davening is not really, what is it? How do they relate to Shemoneh Esrei? They don't have anything to daven for because the parnasa, they get everything. The parents take care of them. In the most part, they don't have to daven for the parnasa. As well, they don't have a family yet, so they're not davening for the children, for their wife, for the children, for the kids, for the family. So b'chlal, and then they're young in general, they're young, and so what? There's no real needs and there's no real this. They're just having moving along. But they get married now. Things are serious. It's a serious thing, and there's things what to daven for, and settle down. Now it says tefillah is instead of the karbanis. Ambol, there was no such a thing as shuls in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Everyone would go to the Beis Hamikdash, and you bring karbanis. But now tefillah is instead of the carbon. So we want to do tefillah in a way that's like a carbon. So when you make a carbon, you have to have the right kavanah. If you have the wrong kavanah, you make it pigul. You can make it, the different machshava makes it puzzle. You have to have machshava for the carbon. Same thing for davening. You have to have the right machshava. As well, by a carbon, when you bring a carbon, you're supposed to be standing. Like when you work in the Beis Hamikdash, you're supposed to stand. When you serve in the Beis Hamikdash. As well, so in Shemoneh Esrei you should stand. Same thing by karbanis. Every carbon has a makom kavua. The carbon is supposed to be brought in a specific place. Certain karbanis are brought in the north side of the mizbeach. Some are brought in the south side, but shchita sebatzafa and shchita sebadarim, like we say in the morning in karbanis. And there's certain places where the blood should be spritzed. Should it be on the top half of the mizbeach, bottom half of the mizbeach, on the corners? All these different. There's an inyan, a kaviyas makom. It's the same thing when we daven. We're supposed to be keveya makom when we're davening. As well, when one brings a carbon, one's not allowed to have a chatzitza. You can't wear a glove while you're holding on to the keli and you're spritzing the blood or a shchita. It has to be done without any chatzitza. Not only that, the kohenim we know walked around barefoot on the mizbeach, around the Beis Hamikdash. So there shouldn't be any chatzitza between their foot and the floor of the Beis Hamikdash. So too, when we daven, we should be facing the wall without anything in between us, anything which is not usually there. A table or a stender or a shafer or something that's usually there, that is okay, but we shouldn't have some random things between us and the wall.
Now we have mask.
Yeah.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yeah.
When you learn Torah, it's like you're filling the divine wisdom. It lights up your heart, lights up your mind. Now you're praying. You've been asking for things for a long time. You don't see them coming. And tefillah is avoda. It's not easy. So what do you tell the Baal Davar with all of these arguments that he has, that you keep on praying, but it doesn't seem to come to you, It's an easy breakdown. What are your answers for that?
It's definitely an issue, it's definitely a sayin. But, it's not like when you're in Hashem's kingdom, Hashem sets the rules. When you're in the king's kingdom, the king sets the rules. So a person who wants something from the king, even if the king doesn't give him to him, he doesn't have a choice to go somewhere else. There's nowhere else to him to go. This is the king. So he has to ask again and again. Hashem wants the tefillos. He appreciates the tefillos of tzaddikim. So there's nowhere else to run. This is the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is Malay Kalaretz Kvaydei, and Ein Malvade. There's nothing else besides for Hashem, and this is who we have to turn to. You know, B'chlal, these are all the basic understanding of tefillah, api nigla, api Shulchan Aruch and Gemara, but we know that there's deeper understanding behind davening also. A person davening could focus on other things that there's also deeper meaning in tefillah. There's the understanding al pi hasoid based on Chassidus and Kabbalah of tefillah. Tefillah is not just a time to ask Hashem for things. Tefillah is a time to connect to Hashem. That a person is supposed to stay connected to Hashem. We're not just 3 times a day getting up and saying, please give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. It's about realizing that we're all dependent on Hashem, having that realization that we have nothing else besides for Hashem. I think a lot of us tend to feel naturally, we feel as if we have our life, and then we believe in Hashem, so there's things that we want from Hashem we need. So Hashem demands certain things. So he wants us to do certain mitzvahs, certain obligations. So we have to do these certain obligations. But when we're finished these obligations, then we revert back to who we are. We are people, we're human beings, we have our own desires and our own aspirations, what we want to do in life. But we know we have a boss, so we have to do what the boss asked of us. So when we finish the mitzvah, we finish what we need to do, okay, now is free time, now is recess. So like the child in the school, now he has recess, so he can go run around and play. But that's a very non-Hasidic way of looking at things, because Hashem is our whole life. There's nothing else besides for Hashem. He didn't create us here in the world. We're not here by chance, that we just somehow managed to get on this planet, or He didn't create us here just to run around and fulfill our own desires. Hashem has a plan, and everything that we do is all connected to this. To this. So we're not employees which have to fulfill our job, and then after our job is fulfilled, we can, go back to being ourselves and doing what we really want to do. It's a whole different idea. So davening is not something that we're looking to move away from. We're looking to daven more, and to, even though we're not on the level of what we know that people of old and Chassidim of old would daven and really immerse themselves in davening and meditate, and they would even sing Nigunim when they would daven. And it's known by different Chassidim, they would sing different tunes when they davened. And different based on their personality and their style of davening, they would hum underneath the tone quietly to themselves certain songs. They were bringing upon themselves getting closer to Hashem and thinking more about their davening. So each to our own level, we can and should, at least on Shabbos, when we have some more time, try to immerse ourselves in davening, to realize it's not just about asking what we need, but it's about realizing that everything is Hashem, and we're all dependent on Hashem, and bringing out betachin, that whatever happens is from Hashem, and it's gamzul l'toiva. Whether we understand it, whether we don't understand it, but that's the way it is, and a person thinks about that and ingrains it, so they become calmer, because they realize the world's not a jungle. Hashem has a plan. So there's a plan over here. So even though certain things happen which are not happy things, but there's a plan. And when you know there's a plan, you don't lose footing. You know that there's a plan, so it's sad, and certain things happen, and we definitely cry about them, and we're upset about it, but we don't lose vision because we know everything's in its order. Hashem knows what he's doing. There's a famous, we'll finish off this parenthetical thought. There's a story they say that the Levi Yitzchak Bardichev said that if he were Hashem, he would have made the world very different. He would have made sure people weren't sick and everyone had parnasa and everything was in the best way possible. They say the Alter Rebbe said, when he heard that, the Alter Rebbe said that if he were Hashem, he would create the world exactly the way Hashem created it now. Because Hashem, if you're Hashem, then that's the way it's supposed to be. We don't understand it, but if Hashem is Hashem, he knows what he's doing, and that's exactly the way it is the way it's supposed to be. Obviously, it doesn't mean that when something sad happens or a misfortune, chas v'shalom, we should be happy about it. Because since we are human beings and the effects of this world of Olam Hazeh do affect us, so the Torah commands us to relate to this reality the way we feel it. That's why we have Hilchos Avelus. A person can say, oh, someone's nifter, Rachman al-Tzlan, oh, it's nothing wrong, his neshama went lamaila, the neshama is here, there's nothing happened, so it was just a guf. The guf goes in the kaver, and the neshama goes lamaila, lasts forever, and the neshama actually now is in a better spot. It's peaceful, and it doesn't have to suffer through the hardships of Olam Hazeh. It's taka true. All of this is true. But down here, there's pain and there's loss. And since that's the way it's felt down here, if someone denies that feeling and doesn't recognize that, the Rambam calls that person cruel. It's cruelty. Because in our feelings, that's cruel. Ein Hanami, that from Hashem's perspective, and if you have the perspective from Shemayim, then yes, everything is fine and there's a plan and everything is the way it's supposed to be. But when things happen in this world, someone lost money, whatever it might be, and a person is definitely pained, and other people hear about it, they should be pained about it and bothered by it, but not lose faith. That's the balance to keep with Amun and Bitachin. On the other hand, a person is supposed to be saddened and he's not supposed to view things the way Malachim view it. He's supposed to view it the way Bnei Adam view it, feel it, but not to lose his Amunah and Bitachin. Al Kapanim, a person should daven and can continue davening, and the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan said, Halavai she yispal Adam kol hayoim. Halavai, a person should daven a whole day. So the tachlis of a person, we have to go to work, and we need breaks because we are human beings. It's difficult for us to focus so much, and we need to give ourselves breaks and recess and all these things. We have to know it's not a real recess. It's not a real break. Really, we should be sitting and davening and learning the whole day. That's the ultimate. But we live here in this world, and we have to take care of different functions and family and our job and other things. And also, even if we don't, we need to relax because we're finite. We're limited. We need to take a vacation. But we shouldn't take a vacation in our hashkafa. We should just take a practical vacation. But the hashkafa, we always know that we're always connected to Hashem, and halavai shispalo kol hayom, ideally. Anyways, continuing with what we were saying before, there are a lot of things that we compare in davening to karbanis. We said we stand during that Shemona Esrei like by a carbon. Makan kavua during Shemona Esrei, like a carbon has a makan kavua where it's shechted and where its blood is spilled, is thrown. We don't have a chatzitza between us and the wall, just like a carbon, you're not supposed to have a chatzitza between you and the keli, the klisharis. As well, it's befitting a person should have special nice clothing for davening, just like a kohen wears big day kohuna. But because people don't have, not everyone has money for this, so the Shulchan Aruch doesn't demand it. It's an appropriate thing. But at least a person should have special pants, the Shulchan Aruch says. clean pants for davening, not dirty pants that he wore when he was on the construction site, when he was gardening. He should have his nice pants that he wears that he goes to shul. So this is not something, this is what's appropriate, not something which it's halachically binding, but it's appropriate. So you have, that's why we wear a hat, a jacket, we try to wear a hat, we wear to be respectful during davening. We do something different during davening than we walk around like we usually do. It's not the same. A further point, Vinegea, this idea of kavana, a person shouldn't think that I am befitting that Hashem should fulfill my will since I had a lot of kavana when I davened. I have a lot of kavana, and therefore Hashem should fulfill, I'm right, Hashem should do what I said, what I davened for. Because Adrabah, this brings out a person's averus. Because if a person comes before Hashem with this confidence that I have zechusim that I can demand certain things, and he comes with a certain demanding that way, so then Momaila, then it causes that they should look inside to his actions to see, are they truly right or not? And we don't want extra accounting into what we do. It's not a good thing for us. We're not always on the best behavior. So the best thing for us is to think that Hashem, we're asking Hashem to do it from chesed, a chesed Hashem. I'm not saying I'm a big tzaddik or I had so much kavanah, therefore Hashem should do it for me. You should say that, no, I'm nothing, I'm not worthy, but Eibishter, you're a chastan, you're a rachaman, you're a chassid, and please, because of this, please, can you fulfill what I'm asking you? I'm asking rachamim. So even though I'm nothing compared to you, I'm nothing before you, but rachamim al kol ma'asav, the Eibusha has rachmanis on all his creations, so please have rachmanis on me and help me in this situation. Now, continuing on, because a person is supposed to have kavanah, a person is not supposed to drink wine or liquor before davening. A person who drank a reviz of wine in one shot, he should not daven until he removes the effects from him. Now, if someone did daven, if he's able to daven, and he would be able to stand before a king and daven, even though he drank a cup of wine before, but he's able to compose himself, the tefillah is a tefillah. He shouldn't lechatchila daven, but he was yotzeh. However, if a person is shikr means that even if he's standing before the king, he will not be able to compose himself. He can't talk before him. If he daven, his davening is a te'eva. There are harsh words Chazal have for such a tefillah. It's called a te'eva. It's ki'ilu oived avodah zara. A person davens shikr. You're standing before a melech and you're playing around like you're shikr, that the davening is not a davening, and you have to re-daven again after the effects go away. And what happens if it's already this man tefillah is going to go by? You'll wait to mimashlim the tefillah the next time. You'll have to daven if you miss shachris, 2 Shemoneh Esrei mincha. Miss mincha, 2 Shemoneh Esrei by Meir. The second one is a tashlumin. This is all only regarding Shemoneh Esrei and Kriya Shema. But all other brachas, even if someone's shikr, you could say. Because we don't demand from a person to have that feeling of oimid l'fnei hamelech a whole day. We understand that a person is not capable of bringing that upon himself. So we don't demand, all parts of davening are not the same. So when it comes to Shemana Esrei, it's mamish ka'omer l'fnei HaMelech. You take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. You talk quietly, you stand, because now at this point you're supposed to bring upon yourself that you're mamish ka'omer l'fnei HaMelech. Other parts of davening, you're not up to that level yet. Obviously, a person's always omer l'fnei HaMelech. The Melech is everywhere. Hashem is always watching you, but we're not able to tune in the whole time. So we tune in to that level by Shemana Esrei. And as well, Kriya Shema and Kriya Shema's brachas have the same din when it comes to regarding drinking. That if you drink a revius of wine or mashke in one shot, you should not say Kriya Shema and his brachas or Shemana Esrei. If you did, if you're not shikr and you're able to speak before a melech, you're yoitza. If you were shikr, you're not yoitza. But other brachas, even though you're shikr, you could say. Now, what happens if during the meal you drank wine? People during the meal, they drink wine. That does not make you that's not possible. It does not make, you're not allowed to daven, because when you drink while you're eating, it doesn't have the effect of just taking a glass of wine and drinking it down. If someone drank just a revius of wine, so if someone sleeps a little bit, it removes the effects of the wine. However, if you drink more than revius, then a little bit of sleep is not going to help. But a lot of sleep always helps. You sleep through, it always removes the effects of the mashke. As well, if you walk, the time it takes to walk a mil, a sheer mil, which is 24 minutes. So if you walk or you ride, it will take away the effects of the wine. But everything has to be lefi the wine. If you see it's not working, you have to wait more time. Lamaisa, this halacha, our wines are not as strong as the wines they had those days. So I think when we discuss the wines then, of times Chazal were very strong. The wines that we have now are not strong wines. So if a person feels, even if he drank more than a revius, if he's davening and he looks inside the siddur, and he's able to be careful to look inside and to, even Baal Peh, if he's able to have kavanah, so we don't tell him to miss davening. Since again, like we spoke earlier, these days, but in general, people are not mechaven l'tefillah. They don't have as much kavanah for tefillah, so we can't be as makpid on this issue. But someone who's totally shikr, he has to be careful even today. His davening is nothing. It's not a davening bichlal, and he has to daven again. But if
is there a difference with the shaliach tzibur?
I mean, the shliach tzibur, you have choice of other people, so you should send someone else up who's not under the influence. You know, there's DWI, davening while intoxicated. So there's, yeah.
What happens? I go to the minyan sometimes in Flatbush because I haven't seen it in Crown Heights. And these guys shuckling all over the place, like that seems to be that their whole metzias of davening is shuckling with their hands. They're moving back and forth. Ki'ilu, I don't want to say chas v'shalom, but when you look at monkeys communicate one to the other with their hands going up and down. Somebody who's a person who talks, they should articulate with their mouth, not necessarily with their body. Is that considered to be being shikr?
He's davening. He's davening. Listen, I don't really, in our kehila, it's not common so much. This, not something we see by our community. In Chabad, that wasn't the way they daven. They say a famous story that in the Stalin or Chassidus, they like to scream the davening. They hold you should scream out, Kol Atzmai Seitei Marna, all your bones should call out Hashem. So they say that the Beis Yisrael of Ger, the Ger Rebbe, was walking by the Stalin Beis Medrash, and he heard them screaming out. So he turned to the Gabbai, the people he was with, and he said, in Yiddish, did they try nicely at first? No, they probiert mit Gutens. Try first, to speak to Hashem softly, and then you'll scream. Don't scream right away. So that a person, I think that they mean well. I don't think anyone means any harm, and if they don't have to do this. But if someone feels like they're talking to Hashem, and that's the way they talk to other people, that's the way they would talk to a melech, then maybe they should do that, Depends how you talk to a melech. Definitely.
The Rebbe would maybe twice chuckle during the whole Shemona Esrei?
Yeah, so, listen, there's a concept of chitzonius and panemius. We have to remember that the main thing of davening is kavana, not the exterior motions that we make. If a person doesn't have, while he's jumping around and doing all these moves, his mind is not there, then what's the tefillah? I'll tell you another story. There was
he used to movement on the floor.
Well, that the Rebbe, right. So the Rebbe was unique in that way. I'm saying not all the Rebbes and tzaddikim were that way. There were other tzaddikim that moved quite a bit when they davened. We know the Alter Rebbe would pound with his fists on the wall in front of him to the point that his hands would bleed. So they put padding on the stand in front of the stender. There were different tzaddikim that davened, different ways. We do find certain rebbes today that do it, but I don't really think that. I'll say something I heard once from an older chassid. He said, certain rebelach that their grandfather, their great grandfather, he was taka real tzaddik. And when he used to make Kiddush, so because he felt the Kedusha of Kiddush, so his hands would shake. And his hands would move because he was shaking because he felt the Kedusha of the mitzvah. He really was margish as a tzaddik. But the grandson who continues the tradition of being a Rebbe, he doesn't really feel that. And he just takes his hand and gives it a shake and moves it around. So we have to remember that that's not it's not the outer emotions, the outer motions. The ikar is our emotions. The ikar is the thing. We don't have to make fun of other people, but we have to know what we have to do for ourselves is to focus on the kavana. I think I recall that I heard a story from Rabbi Yael Khan that he said, I don't recall the details, but he told over that Mendel Futterfass had told him that when he had seen Reb Itcha de Mas Medaven. Itcha de Mas was a famous chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe, who was known as a very big tzaddik, and he was an unbelievable yid. And Reb Itcha de Masmid, when he saw him davening, he saw him at one point, he saw him taking his fingers together and, like calling out and davening. And he was looking at it and he thought, this is not Chabad. Chabad is not into making motions with the hands and with things. This looks what's called chitzoniistic. This looks external. And Chabad, mont pnimius, Chabad demands inwardness, not to do anything with the. But when he asked someone about it, I don't recall who he had asked. That person said, if you would feel even 1% of what Reb Itcha de Masmid felt during his davening, you'd be jumping around. You wouldn't just be making with your finger like that. Meaning Reb Itcha de Masmid had so much emotions in him when he davened, that if he wouldn't have controlled his emotions, he would have been all over the place. You saw a little movement from him. That was just a little bit of what his emotions were inside of him. Anyways, Lamaise is we're simple Jews, and we need to just know to try to focus more on our davening and to look inside and to think more of the words. Practically speaking, we can, pick a certain tefillah and say we're going to concentrate at this week. We're going to focus on Baruch She'amar, Yishtabach, Ashrei, Shema, whatever it is, we're going to focus and try to say each word with kavanah. And we're going to start to focus on certain parts of davening and concentrate on what we're saying. Now, really, a person, when it comes to Reish Chodesh and Yom Tif, people are not used to the davening. So a person should really prepare the davening before. This is what the Rambam writes. However, today, we don't do this. No one prepares before Yom Tif, Reish Chodesh, the davening, to become familiar with the davening, because today's days, we have a siddur. When there was no printing press and people daven Baal Peh, they didn't have a siddur. But now you have a siddur, you can look inside and you know what to daven. However, still in all, a person should prepare parts of davening that he doesn't know the meaning of. Before the Yom Tif, he should look it over. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, especially the piyutim, which is very difficult to understand what these different piyutim, these extra pieces that we add during Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, they're very cryptic a lot of times. It's not so easy to understand the meaning of them. It's kedai to take a look before, if one can, and try to learn a little bit, understand a little bit. Rosh Hashanah is coming, Yom Kippur, or another Yom Tif. No, I never understood what this tefillah was about. I always liked the singing of it and everything, but I don't really know the meaning. So let's look a little bit. And actually today with the English Siddurim, so a person can always take an English Siddur, will help him out a lot, even during davening, to use a Siddur in another language, which will help him understand what he's saying. So have a more meaningful davening. I heard a story how in Poland the Frierdiker Rebbe had made a yeshiva after he had left Russia. They were coming from the Yud Beis Tammuz, and we know after the Frierdiker Rebbe came out of jail and he was freed, so the Frierdiker Rebbe had to leave Russia. The Russian government didn't want to deal with the Frierdiker Rebbe anymore. They couldn't do anything to him because they got in trouble if they put him in jail, and there was such a big outcry. And they let the Frierdiker Rebbe, had to let the Frierdiker Rebbe out of jail. And on the other hand, the Frierdiker Rebbe was making trouble. They didn't want the Frierdiker Rebbe there. He was keeping all the Yiddishkeit going along. So they wanted the Frierdiker Rebbe to leave Russia. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said he's only going to leave if he could take with him his family and his close people that he needs, and as well his library of Svarim. So now, anyways, when he came out from Russia, he was for a while in Riga, and later on, he eventually made his way to Poland, and he was in Warsaw, and he founded a yeshiva in the outskirts of Warsaw called Atvatsk, Poland. And he made a yeshiva there, and there was a lot of Bachrim, local Bachrim from Poland that weren't from Russia, which was the Lubavitch, where the Lubavitch movement was from, who had joined this yeshiva. Anyways, the Rebbe would come to visit his shver, to visit the Frierdiker Rebbe in Atvatsk. He would come there, let's say, for Tishrei and for other times. So there was a certain person there that would always like to copy the davening of Reb Isha de Masmid. This person really wasn't someone who's really into his davening. He just liked to make an impression that he was a very big chassid and he knows how to daven a real davening. So he would observe Reb Itcha the Masmid, how he davened. And whenever he finished davening, he would make sure to finish 10 minutes later. So he always looked like he was like the bigger chassid even. He even davened 10 minutes after Reb Itcha the Masmid finished davening. So this was continuing for a while, but then Reb Itcha the Masmid had left town. So he wasn't there then. So this person started to daven, like on Shabbos, he was davening. And so the Rebbe told someone, the Rebbe was the son-in-law then, he turned to someone, he said, it's a rachmanis on him. He doesn't know when to finish davening. Now the Rebbe the Masmid was not here, so when should he finish? He always knew he has to finish 10 minutes after the longest person davened. He doesn't know when to finish. So we don't need to look at other people. We need to look at ourselves and try to have a concentration on a few more lines, a few more words. Now, a person, l'chatchila, should have kavanah on all the brachas, right? In Shemona Esrei. But if you can't have kavanah on all of them, at least you should have kavanah, the first bracha. Magen, it's called Avos, the first bracha. From the beginning till Magen Avram. And a person should make sure to have kavanah. He should hold himself in. You should have kavanah, the first bracha. This is something very. And if you're in the middle of the bracha, go think back to the beginning of the bracha and review it over with kavanah, with pirush hamilas of what you're saying. Now, really, ideally, if someone did not have kavanah in the first bracha, he has to repeat the first bracha again. However, we don't do that today because, like we said before, people in general don't have a lot of kavanah, so you can always have to constantly go back. So you shouldn't go back. Maybe the second time you're not going to have kavanah anyways, also. However, when it comes to Kriya Shema, when it's just one line, the first pasuk, if you didn't have kavanah, you should say Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad once again. You should say it again. You're supposed to have kavanah when you say the first line of Shema. And as well, when you say in Ashrei, in Pesukei de Zimra, Pesach Es Yodecha, Maspil Chai Ratzain, if you have kavanah, that for Parnasa, Hashem, you open up your hands and you satiate every living being. Maspil Kol Chai. A person should say it over again if he didn't have kavanah.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Can I ask what your kavanah is when you say Kriya Shema?
Shema Yisrael, hear Yidden, meaning us, Klal Yisrael, we should hear, we should recognize. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem is our God, meaning He's our sustenance. He's our life force. And this life force, and Hashem is Echad, He is one. He's one, and the one meaning He's not only one and there's no one else, not a second one, but also He's one. Echad meaning, Echad stands for, Aleph stands for Alufei Shel Olam. He is the master of the world, and the Ches, the Ches stands for is 8, Gematria of 8, 7 skies, 7 Rikiyam, and 1 stands for the Aretz, and the Dalet is the 4 corners of the world. Hashem is the Alufei Shel Olam. He's the master of the whole world, of everything in the world. That's what he has to think. Al pi halah. A person can think more. That's all he has to think when he says the words Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now again, and now during the brachas of Shemona Esrei, even more important to have kavanah and the chasima at the ending than the entire bracha. A person will have everything kavanah, but focus more on the ending of the bracha. The chasima is a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem chein hadas. Baruch atah Hashem reifei chalbas reifei cham Yisrael. A person's not supposed to daven in his heart. He's supposed to actually say it with his lips. He shouldn't daven loudly, but he should quietly whisper the words. Now, if a person cannot have kavanah while he's whispering, or he can't have as much kavanah, he's allowed to lift up his voice higher and daven loudly, because it gives him more kavanah. When people, it says koil ma'orer kavanah. When you talk, it's ma'orer you to think. So if you don't have kavanah by whispering it, if you're davening privately, you can say it out loud. But when you're davening with other people, you can't disturb other people. So if you still feel you can't daven with davening quietly because you lose concentration when you're mumbling, so therefore you should better go home. Better go home and daven at home loudly. That's what it takes.
Shemona Esrei, you're supposed to speak very quiet. Not even supposed to hear yourself.
And correct. But what happens if the person feels that he doesn't have kavanah that way? He needs to daven out loud. When he says it, it gives him a chayis, and as he's saying each word, he thinks what it means. He needs to say it out loud. So you can do that.
He should be
okay. It's a good idea. But what happens if they don't let him be the shliach tzibur? So he can go at home. He could do that. In the shul, you're not allowed to do that. You can't disturb other people. But better go home. If you can't have kavanah, a person should daven wherever he has kavanah. You're even allowed to go home and daven out loud, just in order to teach your family the nusach of davening. Those days you didn't have Sidurim, and you wanted to teach the children how to daven, so you're allowed to go home and daven out loud, and the children hear and listen, and they pick up how to daven. That was something that was mutter to do. Now, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, since we don't have we're not as used to these davening, and we also need to ma'or more kavanah because it's days of tshuva. We do lift up our voices more in davening, because to have more kavanah, but obviously not too loud. But a shliach tzibur, like you said before, a shliach tzibur, adrabah, he should lift up his voice very loud. However, if he's doing it in order just to show off that he has such a beautiful voice, that's not the intent. Intent is not there should be a show. Come to Park Avenue and you're going to hear an unbelievable show and you pay for seats to hear the davening. It's not a concert. But if he davens out loud with a chayis, and this gives a enthusiasm and has the call more involved in the davening beautifully, you should daven out loud and daven loudly. Get everyone involved.
Rabbi,
yes.
Are you allowed to cry on Shabbat while you're davening?
I mean, he shouldn't cry about things that bother him. If it's things that he's missing physically, he shouldn't focus on them because it's bringing pain. First of all, davening on Shabbos, we don't mention your tzrachim, your needs. So a person shouldn't focus on things that bother him, and during the week it should be a yom menucha. If he's crying because he wants to have a bit deeper relationship with Hashem, it's a little different. But not to cry about the Gashmias.
Ruchnias, you're allowed to. Okay.
Right. Ruchnias, you can always cry about the Ruchnias.
Rabbi, does that mean that when the Rav gives a shir or gives a lecture on Shabbos?
I'm just thinking now of an episode that happened. It was an episode that happened in the later years by the Rebbe and a Farbrengen, that actually the Rebbe told someone to stop crying by a Farbrengen. That it was not during davening, it was by a Farbrengen. The Rebbe had spoken a lot about Mashiach and Mashiach should come and the fact that we're in Gullus and we really want to leave Gullus. And there was a Yid there who started to cry by the Farbrengen. And he was crying that, he wants the Geula already, enough of this Gullus. So the Rebbe took the opposite turn, and the Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said, a Rav should paskin that should say clearly the halacha that you're not supposed to cry in Shabbos. And the Rebbe turned to Rabbi Heller, and Rabbi Heller didn't want to say anything because of the kavod of the older Rav, Rabbi Marlo. And Rabbi Marlo stood up and said that, you shouldn't cry in Shabbos. But this is about Mashiach. But it was a Ruchnistic thing. But for some reason, the Rebbe didn't want it to come to crying. Obviously, it was most probably because there was a despair. Shouldn't be despair. But someone crying because they want to be close to Hashem, not despair, not that we're losing hope. Now, someone who davened, but he did not hear what he's saying. He whispered, but he whispered so low, he himself couldn't hear himself. He's Yaitza. You should say it in a way that you and your own ears hear yourself. But if they don't, you're still Yaitza. However, if you said Shemona Esrei just in your heart without saying it with your mouth, you're not Yaitza. You have to daven again. Shehirur lav kedimur dami. Thinking is not like speaking. However, you could daven other language. You could daven in another language.
What happens if you mumbled and you didn't pronounce the word correctly? Are you Yaitza?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess it depends how far he didn't mention the words correctly and what parts of davening, if it was the chasim of the bracha, he didn't say properly, it's a problem. You have to make sure that you're reading the words correctly.
Rabbi Lerner, we don't learn from Chana רק שפתיה נאות וקולה לא יישמע to daven?
Yes, we do. Good question. But that means is it shouldn't be heard to other people, but not to yourself. To yourself, you could, but not for other people.
Have Rachel mevecha al baneha.
Now, right? Rachel mevecha al baneha. Now, a person who doesn't understand Lashon Kodesh, should daven in other languages. He should daven in English, in whatever language they're comfortable with. They don't understand Lashon Kodesh. Because if a person doesn't know what they're saying, it's not pshat that you're, some mitzvahs, you do the mitzvah without kavanah, so it's not, you did the mitzvah, you just were lacking a detail of kavanah. However, when it comes to the davening is kavanah. Davening is kavanah. If you don't have kavanah, it's not a tefillah b'chalal. So a person should better daven in any language that he's comfortable with if he doesn't understand Lashon Kodesh. I want to make clear that when you daven in another language, you have to say the name of Hashem the way it's in that language. For example, you can't use the word Hashem. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know how the art scroll siddur, I don't know if it's changed today, but at one point they would translate the names of Hashem. When it said Hashem's name, they would, instead of writing G-O-D or L-O-R-D, they would write Hashem in English, H-A-S-H-E-M. That's not davening when you say Hashem. It's not saying Hashem's name. Hashem is just means the name. Hashem does not, because the halach is you're not supposed to say Hashem's name for no reason. So therefore, even in any language, by the way, in any language, therefore we say Hashem. We don't want to just throw around Hashem's name. But when you daven, you're actually supposed to say Hashem's name. And when you're davening in another language, you should use the way how Hashem is called in that language. But Hashem is meaningless. Hashem is not a name of Hashem, and one is not yoytze Shmoneh Esrei by saying Hashem. So a person has to say God, Lord. That's what he needs to say.
Not Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the way we say it. That's the one word maybe they should say. And let's say they're davening in English or in Russian.
They could. If they want, they could say Hashem's name in Hebrew. They could say Hashem's name in Hebrew. But I'm saying in the Siddurim, if they're saying in another language...
The Babka has Russian Siddurim. I wonder how it says.
I don't know how it's today, but I remember seeing years ago that I think maybe the art scroll wrote Hashem every time it's the name of Hashem. And I think they wrote in the beginning that because it's maybe not clear how to translate Hashem's name, this is what they're writing. But that's a problem. Because it's okay if you want to use that siddur just to look up a translation. I can't hear you.
I know a person who wrote into our scroll about this issue, and he told me that since he wrote into it, they stopped writing Hashem, and they started to write either God or the Lord as should
Oh
be.
wow, very interesting story. So I'll have to take a look at the newer editions. And I'm very happy that you told me this. So this is an issue. Like, I guess the art scroll, their intent was they didn't realize maybe people are using this as this. They thought maybe people are looking up translation, but they're not davening from it. But, if you're looking at a translation, you have it side by side. You're reading the Hebrew. You want to know what a word means. You look on the other side. Okay, it's fine. You're reading in the Hebrew. But if you're going to read straight in the English, and you're going to read the name of Hashem as Hashem, it's not a Shmoneh Esrei. It's a problem in the Shmoneh Esrei. So actually, even in the Lubavitch Siddur, which translates the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei as God and Elokim as Lord, there was a certain Talmud Chacham who many years ago in the 70s, he wrote, a Lubavitch Talmud Chacham who wrote this is not correct because Lord is used, let's say in England, to describe a person. People are called the Lord over there. Sir, Lord, whatever it is.
But it's the same thing as Adon.
What?
It's Adnut.
So there was this argument, but...
Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the key. But if you read it, Adnut. Adnut is the same thing as Adon, my Lord. Just what the whole difference is, when you say Lord, does it have a capital L or a small l? When you're talking to a person, it has a small l. When you're talking to God, it has a large L.
So I guess that could be that's a good way to differentiate. If it's a capital L, then you say that's a name a word that refers to Hashem. If it's a lower, if not a capital, then it refers to a person. Anyways, that's the way it's translated. Elokim is Lord because, and like you're saying, it shows on rulership. Elokim is the idea of being.
Oh, I know. Adnut is Lord. Elokim is not Lord. Elokim is God. Adnut is Lord.
Well, I think it says in Shulchan Aruch that when you say Elokim, you should think how he's shalit b'chol ha'olam, I think. And when you say Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, when you say Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, you should have in mind the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is Haya, Haiva, V'yi. Hashem was, is and will be. Hashem is above time, and Haya, Hayviya, he was, he is, and he will be. When you say the name Havaya, name Elohim, it says that he has the power to do what he wants in Elyonim and Tachtoinim. I think Olamaisa will stop here, and Amrit Hashem will be mamshich next week. Hopefully, we'll be back on schedule. It's a Monday night, Amrit Hashem.
Koach, Rabbi, beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful
call
share.
to everyone.
Thank you, every night. If
Yeah.
I may
Thank you,
correct,
Rabbi.
Jonathan Sachs
Okay.
from England, his name is Lord. Right?
I don't know, how do you get to become a lord?
The King of England give him the title.
No, the Queen. There's no king.
The Queen, I'm sorry.
Okay, does it come with any extra money? It's
Depends who you know.
I think it's covered. It's covered.
Yeah. That's all it is. It's covered.
I once saw the Malchuvah Dam from English, and I thought I'm in a church, the way he's saying stuff, the way they pronounce the stuff, it sounds like almost like a church.
Well, Havdalas, you know.
Yeah, but the way he was reading it was so difficult. So, but he was davening to Hashem.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But Rabbi, most American they don't know Hebrew. They don't have kavana when they're davening. 80% from the American.
But when they daven with the English siddur, they understand what they're saying.
They should daven with the English siddur, I think.
Right.
But they don't. They daven in regular Hebrew siddur, but they don't have kavana. I saw so many of them.
They can daven with the regular siddur.
It's a problem. They should have a shiur on Pirush HaMilot to teach them what
Okay.
the words mean.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's very important. The Pirush HaMilim is very good.
I want to come up with a new campaign. When you wake up in the morning, till you don't finish davening shachris, you don't open your phone.
Now you have to say my Diani first.
Same with the honey, go to mikveh, don't open your cell phone till you finish davening shachris. A new campaign.
No.
בהצלחה.
Amen.
Call to sei gesund.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. תודה.
Yeah, call to. Good night.